and let us all do we can to build a better future.
First of all, the United States Department of Agriculture and the United States will be joining the Global School Meals Coalition. Now, many of you have heard me report on this show about the deplorable state, and yes, I did say deplorable, of school lunches in this country, where you have children whose parents have not been paying their lunch bills, having their lunches thrown into the garbage in front of them and given a piece of fruit and a cheese sandwich. We have been hearing about the poor quality of school luncheons in this country. In fact, it got so bad a couple years back that there was a high school here in Chicago that set up a full-scale rebellion, putting pictures of what they were getting served, which included rotten apples, chicken patties that were still pink inside, and otherwise still frozen things like fish sticks and fruit cups. It was just disgusting. In any case, and the thing is that the joke of all this is that around the world, other countries do things differently. In France, for example, schools either have a chef or there is a canteen led by professional chefs, where they serve meals that are all dietitian approved. The parents get the menus at home for the month because in French culture it's important to teach children how to eat properly. The children eat at tables, they sit at tables, except for one of the older students who is the host, who will go and get more bread and water. The kids get water with their meals. They get a separate cheese course instead of milk. A cheese course.
What? In France, they have a cheese course?
A cheese course. Imagine that. I was actually watching one of these canteens where they were preparing the meals for the students. They take a sample of every dish, put it in a hermetically sealed bag, and then they are stored so in case somebody gets food poisoning, they can track exactly where it came from. I mean, nice. It was unbelievable what was going on. Now, another example of this is in Japan, where the kids prepare their own school lunches. They get together as a group and they prepare their school lunches. And of course, there are exceptions to all of this, but there are other countries that believe that kids need nourishing, tasty food. And by the way, they could learn some life skills in the process, which is kind of the goal of sending your kid to school last time I checked.
Yeah.
So
I gotta say,
I'm hoping we learn something from this.
So, like, I feel like it should be in America, we're a big food country. I mean, like, maybe not to the degree France is, but I think we have more variety than France does. Why aren't like all the restaurants like? It's just like this just seems like a self-interest thing. Even if we don't care about the actual making kids more rounded, better people and having food and growing up successfully. If we don't care about that part of the education system, why isn't every like Chinese restaurant going, I would really like to show an example of good Chinese food so when these kids grow up, they're long-time customers. Like I had a whole thing with some people that are related that they're just like they're older and they're just super picky. Like to this day, it's like, hey, can we do this? I don't like it. I've never tried Indian food, but I definitely don't like it. It's like you're missing out on custom. This is stupid. It's stupid that we're poisoning kids with food that's not cooked. It's terrible that we're throwing away good food to show the value of the food. It's terrible that we're not involving. Wouldn't it be cool to involve restaurants? That's an apprenticeship program. That's a class. Helping the chefs in the school with the kids doing the cooking. There you go. Bada bing. That's a class. Instead, we're so determined to keep kids from eating if they can't afford it that we're giving them rotten apples.
I'll keep my response short. It's degrading that in the richest country in the world that we are starving the next generation that will inherit our seats. This is not how a superpower should act. This is not how anyone should just accept as being acceptable behavior. This is inhumane, and the sad fact is this is happening all over the country. The young people should eat food and not be shamed, not be humiliated. It's inhumane.
Yeah. I also want to point out that the Department of Agriculture has released a study that was done back in 2018 that confirms many of the things I've been reporting on when I'm talking about food stamp, or AKA SNAP, benefits in this country. And what I've pointed out is that many of the attempts to reform food stamps in this country don't take into consideration the real difficulties that many people have with eating a healthy diet while living in poverty. And according to the study, 88% of the participants report encountering some type of hurdle to an healthy diet. First of all, 61% reported difficulties affording healthy foods. That where they were at, it was difficult for them to put together a solid meal of healthy foods, healthy whole foods, which they would prefer to eat. The second one is that a lack of time to make meals from scratch. 30% said, I don't have the time to cook. I don't have the time to do the kind of meal prep and the cooking, because, of course, many of these folks have kids they're taking care of. They have elderly relatives they're taking care of. They may be going to work. And yes, most people who receive these benefits, who are not disabled, who are not elderly, who are not kids, do work. And many of those that don't are engaged in some kind of caregiving. They reported difficulty in doing this, preparing meals from scratch. 19% pointed to problems with getting to a grocery store. We talk about food deserts in this country, and it's a real thing. And yes, technically speaking, you could get on a bus and take a few miles to a local grocery store, but realistically, how much can you carry back with you? And if it's a hot day, and we're getting a lot more hot days in a lot of this country, realistically, how safe is that for you to be spending an hour or two carrying your perishable food? Yeah. And then also no storage for fresh or cooked foods. People probably don't have working refrigerators. And again, I've spoken about the fact that we cannot assume that people have appliances in this country. So I think a lot of this, some of these things could in some cases be addressed. I am aware that there are grocery stores, and make no mistake, grocery stores have historically championed full access to food stamps without exemptions, because grocery stores get a lot of money from food stamps. They will teach classes in how to prepare healthy meals. They will help bring in nutritionists, home economists, show people where to shop, how to comparison price, and will give recipes and teach people basic cooking skills. But that's clearly not enough. Something else is going to have to give, like, for example, offering living wages. Yeah. Offering UBI, reducing financial stress, trying to assure that people who are living in a home, and many people who claim food stamps may be homeless or have insecure housing, have access to food storage and a stove. All of these are essential issues for the people, the working poor and the poor in this country. And until that changes, the thing is that food stamps have become a political football. They're visible, and people use them to shame each other. What we're seeing here is that there's a far more serious situation. A lot of people don't have the time, the resources, the knowledge to make the most of the food stamp program, the food that they're getting, and this has to be addressed in this country. We have an obesity epidemic in this country. We have people eating processed food. We have nutritional issues in this country that absolutely need to be addressed, and they can be addressed through a variety of means, including stress reduction. Don't have people who are constantly on the precipice of financial collapse. That could help. Allowing for green spaces, safe neighborhoods where people can exercise and engage in sports, having real supermarkets within, half a mile of dense urban populations. Come on, folks, we can do better in this country.
So right. I was just thinking to myself, let's think of some examples. So let's say you're talking about these people that don't have anything to work with. It's like, well, how much does it cost to very quickly make a loaf of bread? Well, if you want to do it quickly and your time is you're working all the time to try and cover your rent, well, maybe you want to have a bread machine. Well, that's $75, $100 for one that can actually, you can set up the night before and have bread when you wake up. And technically, you usually have to have some perishables that go into that bread mixture, especially when it's very important, a yeast. Yeast has to be kept frozen when it's not in use or it's no good. So you have to have a refrigerator. So effectively, to have fresh made bread, if you have these two things, is like a buck. You're actually saving a lot of money over what you'd spend at a grocery store to buy a loaf of bread that's been pre-sliced. But you need probably like $700 or $800 of equipment to make that $1 purchase, and that's, to Lainey's point, if you don't have a fridge, if you don't have a stovetop, you can't do a lot. And
there are places where, many of us are used to moving into apartments or homes that for renting that have appliances. That's not true in all areas, and landlords are not obligated to provide appliances. And I told the story a couple years back, I want to say, about an elderly man living alone, legally blind, diabetic, in a wheelchair, who wanted to make a healthy meal of oatmeal. But because of his limitations, he ended up with third-degree burns in the hospital, and then lost his benefits because he was in the hospital. Okay? This is the kind of nonsense that we're going to have when people try to talk about, well, those terrible people on food stamps are buying chips and soda, and by the way, they don't buy chips and soda any more than the average person does. That has also been established. That this is a far more complex issue, and somebody needs to take it seriously.